Hey everyone, and welcome to Shaper Sessions. I'm Russ. I'm a woodworker here at Shaper Tools. I work on content creation for Shaper Hub, where you can find this amazing lamp helping all of our creators bring these projects to life. And this is Jake.
Hey,
Introduce yourself.
hey, my name's Jake. I am the senior application specialist here at Shaper, and basically that means that whatever Origin could do, I know how to do it, or at least I tried my absolute best. And joining us today, we have the creator of the Elate lamp, our most recent Shaper Hub project, Leah Amick.
Yeah, let's bring her on. Hey Leia, how's it
Hi.
going?
Good. Hi, everybody. I'm Leah Amick, a multidisciplinary designer, and I designed this lamp we're going to show you today.
Well, heck yeah. Glad you're here. Thanks. Um, we've got a ton of questions for you. It's not every day that we get to talk to a professional furniture designer. Um, but first, I'd love to show off some of your work. I took some time today to look at your website and pulled some pictures. So, Goose, can we pull up a picture of that peel cabinet? Yeah, so I just thought this was really awesome. And there's a theme that I noticed throughout your work. I'm sure we'll see a lot more of this, of bringing unexpected elements, design elements, and some playfulness to woodworking. I've never seen a cabinet that opens this way, so could you tell us a little about it?
Yeah, sure. So the first one on the left, the taller one, I actually made while I was in grad school at RISD. Um, and it kind of came about from a project where we were just given a word, and that word was surfaces. And we could do whatever we wanted with it. So my interpretation was kind of trying to create a surface that would also kind of bend and break, but add that to a functional object. And so I came up with this peel cabinet. Um, from there, after I left RISD and moved to Portland and got a studio out here, I developed it further to create the credenza.
That's
So cool.
that's really really cool. And award winning, which you very humbly did not mention, a design
Yes.
gold award on that one, which is really incredible. And yeah, just beautiful finish and final touches on that. I love the blue lining. I
Thank
also
you.
saw your idle chair, which seemed like an interesting twist on the lounge chair. I know I
Yeah.
sit in chairs sideways, probably unhealthily regularly. Um, Maybe not the best for my back, but this lounge chair looks like it solves that problem. Could you tell us a
Yeah.
little
So
about this one?
that was exactly the goal. I'm always sitting in weird positions. And so I wanted to create an object that kind of promoted that unconventional use of a chair while still being comfortable and looking nice. And so I came about its idle. And that was actually also done at RISD. It was my upholstery class. So I learned to upholster with that chair.
It looks incredibly comfortable. It definitely beckons you.
That's awesome. We're going to need to get you in here as a consultant because Jake has talked often about bringing in a sewing machine, and
Uh
we
huh.
don't have one yet. Uh,
Hmm.
so maybe you could give us some tips on that
Let's just
later.
cover this whole
Yeah, sure.
place in foam scraps.
Yeah.
Shaping foam, shaper session.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Upholstery can be really fun. It's also very tedious, especially if you have to make patterns and things.
Yeah.
Cool. Um, yeah, so those are two of your things. We've also got this settle bath tray, um, which looks like a little more recent work. Is that right?
Hmm. Yes. So I made this last December, and it was actually a birthday present for a good friend. Um, and but I liked it so much that I felt like I needed to share it with the world and put it on my website. And it was mostly done with a table saw, but there are some pieces that were done with the origin, mainly the wine glass holder.
Yeah. I like that. And the tea are there actually spots for the individual tea lights as well?
Hmm.
There you
Yeah,
go.
so there are little
Yeah.
pockets there for the tea lights to sit in.
Those
Yeah.
are very cool.
I love that. That's a very furniture designer thing to do, to design your own piece for a friend's birthday. Um,
Hmm.
so could you give us I'm really curious personally. A little insight on what life is like as a full-time professional independent furniture designer these days.
Yeah. So actually, half of my work is product development for companies. So I freelance doing more industrial design work. Um, this past year, it's been a little more than half of my time. But then my passion projects are always these custom made furniture pieces, and I'd love to do more of that work. I love getting custom projects and spending time in the shop whenever I can.
Yeah, cool. That's awesome. Um, that does lead pretty clearly into the thing that you've been working on with us, which is this lamp, which I think you designed originally for yourself, but then we teamed up on bringing it to Origin and bringing it to Shaper Hub. Yeah, the Elate lamp. We've got nice, beautiful photos of all of the parts there. Um, and could you walk us through your process on designing this beautiful piece?
Sure. So I first designed the original in 2017, I think it was. And it started initially as I wanted to create a light that fit within the same collection of another piece. I had a coffee table titled Strut. So from there, I kind of, this coffee table has bent metal elements. And so I tried to create a lamp that had the same design language. But ultimately, I was really enjoying that bent feature more so than something that matched the coffee table. So that brought me into kind of creating, a light that was all wood. And while I was sketching, I had one of my sketches. You can see it's just a bulb, and it has kind of this fun character to it, up on the upper right side. And from there, I wanted to create something that had that same feeling to it, but was more approachable as almost a traditional lamp, but just a little different. And so then in the next page, you can see my prototypes. I kind of just played around in the shop, creating shades or buying shades that already existed, and then kerf cutting some wood and bending it and working out the scale and the form.
And that seems to be a big part of your process, I know, in when it comes to the quick ideation and iteration on different concepts and just kind of getting it out of your head into the real world. Is that kind of the process you went through with this lamp too?
Yes. So I like to go through a lot of different versions, whether it's physically or just in Fusion or 3D modeling. I also do a lot of sketching at first. So there's definitely a lot of iterations with Elate. Even the one that I was redesigning for Origin, I think I went through maybe 5 different versions and had to experiment with a lot of different parts in order to make it work for Origin. So, for example, there's this piece, this structure that holds the shade to the body of the lamp. That originally was a metal piece that I had bent. And then I shifted to a 3D printed part that was easier to assemble. But for Origin, I needed to do something out of wood. So I had to completely redesign just the way that the entire shade was built. And that took that was a lot of trial and error there.
Yeah, you knocked it out of the park. I remember seeing this project coming down the pipeline and just saying to myself, like, this is exactly what Origin, it's like highlights all the best parts of using Origin, that like incredibly precise part making and like having it all come together in such a beautiful package. Uh, you did great. You killed
Yeah,
it.
yeah, totally agree. Your design process reminds me a lot of our product design process here, and more generally an industrial design process. I know you studied industrial design as an undergraduate and the furniture design as a graduate degree. How does your industrial design background influence your furniture? I'm curious.
Yeah, it influences a lot. And in my undergraduate degree, I learned a lot about the kind of just design principles and technical parts of it, as well as 3D modeling and things like that. Once I went to RISD and learned more about furniture, it was more the artistic side and the woodworking side. And so those two together are kind of creating like my pieces. They, as you said before, they're kind of have these surprise elements, but they're still functional pieces, and that's the art from the furniture RISD side coming out in these more product pieces. So it's furniture that you can actually use, and it's not just an art piece. Yeah.
That's awesome. And it's clear that you are a very skilled woodworker at this point, so they must have done a good job there. Um, cool. Well, from where it started to where it is today, as we've seen, this lamp has taken a lot of iterations, from originally something that was going to be more bent metal, more industrial, to a one-of-a-kind, adapted specifically for Origin project. Can you walk us through some of the things that influence the way that this lamp came out now? How maybe Origin has changed your workflow for working on the lamp from your earlier production process to your current production process, or some of the like nerdy specifics of what you ended up redesigning for this?
Yeah, sure. Well, one thing that became a lot easier to make using Origin instead of my original design was the neck. That was a bent lamp piece, so I had to have molds for the neck, and I had to cut the strips and do a lot of process work to create just that simple form. But with the Origin, I'm able to cut two halves and put them together. And if you use book matched boards, then you can't even really see the seam. So it was definitely an interesting process thinking about this thing that was so precise, but just so much easier to create than the traditional method. It's kind of the same with other joinery, like in the base. There's the base to the neck, that joint is sort of complex, and I don't even know how I would make it if I didn't have Origin. So it was kind of fun to think about these things that would be so much more difficult that I maybe wouldn't even want to tackle if I didn't have the precision of this tool.
Cool. And we're gonna cut that neck to base joint today, but Goose, can we get the bench cam on this just to show what kind of joinery we're looking at? So Jake, how would you describe that joint even?
Let's call it an H joint.
All right, an H joint. Yeah, so we've got a lot of long grain exposed. We've got like double the amount of long grain exposed that you normally would, because we've cut like an H shape into that base.
The way the file is set up too is really nice because you can edit individual surfaces, just really dial in that fit by taking a thousandth of an inch off at a time. And so much of it's dependent on how you mill your material, so like being able to edit that joint in such a way is critical. I was blown away when I was cutting it. It's like, this is well thought out. I like it.
Yeah, that was definitely part of the trial and error. I've made a lamp before that didn't have as tight of a joint as I wanted, and it didn't last very long. So I knew that I needed to make something that you could adjust, because wood moves. I mean, it's a natural material. It's hard to get it, an exact thickness. So that's a really important part of the design.
Cool. Well, you got any questions? I think that any other questions? That's kind of covered my curiosity.
Yeah, I want to show off a couple of details just using the bench cam. Let's do it. So this whole, I guess, how can I really tilt that in? That whole top section, when I was talking about those like really detailed, intricate parts, I'm talking about all these intersecting bits here that all just fit together beautifully and create just a one-of-a-kind structure that makes this whole lamp feel effortlessly light. Yeah, and even in that exploded view, it's just like, when I saw this, I had to question whether Leia was an engineer at one point, or what was happening.
I am married to an engineer, so sometimes he's pretty helpful.
It's just a dynamite household then. Industrial designer and an engineer.
Yeah, I saw your Autodesk Fusion 360 solid model also. Like, incredibly well organized, not just a complex model, but broken out into subfolders
Yeah.
in the feature tree. Yeah, very well done. Very well done.
Yeah. I will be honest, I'm not always that organized, but I knew I had to hand that off to somebody else, so
Yeah,
Yeah.
well,
felt
we
like I should
appreciate it.
take the extra time. Yeah.
Part of the beauty of the project too is the PDF that it comes with. When I say it's an absolute joy, it's an understatement. It's such a
Yeah.
well put together PDF that takes you through the process of making all these different parts, and you'll learn a lot through building the project. You'll acquire a couple of new bits that we'll talk about today that you can add to your arsenal, and you'll learn how to wire up a lamp, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, these are just some example pages that we dropped in. But we're looking at like 30 to 40 pages
Yeah.
of beautifully illustrated and well-written PDF.
It's a stack.
It's a book, basically.
Well, thanks. Yes. It was very tedious to put together, but it was fun. I
Yeah.
enjoyed it.
Cool. Thanks for your tips. We actually on our website right now we have the tips and tricks that Leia has shared with us, and as well as quite a few others from other creators out in the world about whether it be just general shop tricks that they have up their sleeves, or things pertaining to Origin, and you'd find those all on our website.
Yeah, level up your game, back to the shop. That's our theme for the month of September, and we just want to learn together with you all. So we asked some of our favorite collaborators what they wanted to share with us, and we've got those tips for you. Cool. So should we get to cutting?
Let's crack into it.
Cool.
We're going to do that joint. We're going to do that neck joint into the base today. So we've already cut the base profile, which again just has like such forethought in it. So it has this funky little tab on top, which is going to come in very handy when we move back to the workstation and create the, I guess, mortise of this whole joint. That is an alignment feature. So baked into the actual file itself, you're going to cut right through that, but it helps you mount everything up in the workstation. Let's start it off with one half of the neck and just go through and cut the details and start from there. I have a 1/4-inch radius bit in my Origin right now, which means it's a bullnose bit. It's a full radius instead of a flat bottom bit that comes with Origin. I'm going to zero out my support or my shelf.
The information on that bit, on that cutter, just like the information for everything else in this project, is in the PDF. Leia found this one on McMaster Carr. This specific cutter, there are probably a lot of places where you could get something equivalent. You could, all kinds of places. Your local hardware store probably even has this cutter. Some other cutters for this project are a little more niche. There's a 10-degree angled cutter that you use for the outside of the base. If we go to the bench cam, we've got this angle right here, which is cut with this 10-degree angled cutter here. And this is just a really well-considered design detail that follows throughout the entire lamp. So we've got the tilt of the neck, which matches the angle of the base, and then also matches the angle of the lampshade here. Really well considered throughout. Also the detail on the cap up there, 10 degrees. So you'll use that cutter a lot. We shared a tip just the other day about cutting wedges for wedged tenons with an angle cutter. You could use this cutter for this, for that, rather than the other cutter that we showed you the other day. Works the same way. And we got this one on McMaster Carr, and that link is in the PDF.
All right, I am bringing in one of our neck files here. Let's go ahead and do the right-hand side. I just have the proper sized material on my workstation. I believe it's about a little over 1/2 inch thick, right?
Yeah, 1/2 inch thick.
1/2 inch thick. And you can see what's really nice is directly in the files you have little callouts like grain direction. I want I'm going to place this first so I can go in and I can read those individual things. There we go. All right, so I've matched the grain direction to optimize for the strength of the material. There's my cord channel. This is what I'm gonna be cutting with that bullnose bit and testing that diameter of my cord before I carry on. So I'll start there. Ba-ba-da-ba-da. And it also is going to tell me exactly how deep I need to go on this, which I believe is 0.15 inches.
Yeah, 0.15 or so.
0.15.
You could also do 0.125 and sneak up on it, but we measured our cord in advance, and 0.15 seems about right. You should measure your cord at home. We got this electrical cord, which we'll be using, but measure your cord before you make any cuts. You want that to be half, approximately, of your cord diameter.
All right, I'll get cracking here.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, so while Jake cuts, maybe we could talk about book matching a little bit. Book matching is the process of resawing a piece of wood on the bandsaw in half. So when you open that wood up, those two pieces now, you have mirror images. And with those mirror images, typically people use these a lot on cabinetry, for example, fine furniture. But Leia, what you did here is we basically book matched these two pieces so that you can fold them back together, right?
Right. Yeah, so that you can basically put them back together and have that neck be almost seamless, since you're only taking off a little bit of material, and the grain and the color will match perfectly.
Yeah.
So it's the ideal solution.
Okay, back to Jake, maybe? Yeah, let's check this cord.
So I got my length of cord. Just want to make sure that everything fits nicely. And that is beautiful. You want to consider too, you're going to be pulling your cord through this channel, so you want to have a little bit of room to be able to sneak it through. All right, and I can swap to my 1/8 inch cutter now.
Yeah, cool. And while you're doing that, could you hand me that other neck part right there?
Sure.
Yeah,
We're not going to do the pre-baked turkey in the oven thing.
It was already on the desk. So what we're doing, just so this makes a little more sense maybe, is cutting this cord channel right here. I guess I could also show you on the finished product. Cutting this cord channel here so that your cord enters in the back of the lamp. You've got a really cool reveal in the front, where some of the color of the cord, that's why we chose this colored braided cord, pops through and then comes back through the back right here. No,
that's glued.
we can't. Sorry, Goose. Yeah, but we'll have one half that we can show in a minute.
All right. I am moving on to all the business that requires an 1/8 inch bit, which is part of the joint down here at the bottom of the neck. And again, it gives you that depth call out really nicely. I'm going to move this. So I quick pocket, and then I do the interior cut that fits that 1/8 inch cutter.
So back to book matching. You could choose to do that for this project, and it would look incredible and grain matched and beautiful. Or since that does require a bandsaw to resaw the wood in that direction, you could also choose to use 2 individual 1/2 inch pieces of wood for each side of the neck. And we have walnut here, which is not a very highly figured wood. So it's possible that even if you use 2 separate pieces, the grain wouldn't be too noticeable. You wouldn't want to do that maybe with a much more figured wood where the grain is much more noticeable. You would probably see that seam down the middle. But book matching recommended. Not strictly required, but if you want to level up your game on this and try something new, this is a great excuse to give it a shot. So we glossed over this a little bit, but right now Jake is helix cutting some dowel holes after he's cut the inside pocket for the base joint. And these are going to be precise 0.25 or quarter-inch holes. And you can see that Origin is basically doing this automatically. Jake is placing Origin over the whole location, just pressing go, and the tool helixes down at exactly the right diameter to exactly the depth specified, and that's making these dowel holes really accurate, precise, and quick. So that, especially for mating parts like this, so that we can get the two halves of the neck aligned perfectly with each other. And let's see how it fits.
Now the project calls for wooden dowels. I had some quarter-inch Delrin dowels, so really they're just alignment features. It's going to make those two pieces come together beautifully, but that is the type of fit I'm talking about. With that little bit of a suction snap.
Oh, do you hear that pop? Yeah.
Pop. And if what's also nice, if whatever dowel you were using didn't work out, you can just open that up by 1/1000th of an inch, 2/1000th of an inch, and you do that by using a negative offset. Negative starts cutting it larger than the original design. All right, all my details are cut. Now it's time for the outer, what's the word?
Profile?
Profile. Thank
Profile.
Profile.
Outline. Yeah, outside cut in Origin parlance.
All right, and for that, I'm just going to use the quarter-inch cutter.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, the details are looking really, really good on this. Got a nice cord fit, and so we have custom anchors in this project. Custom anchors are a new feature in our latest software release, Inverness. So if you haven't upgraded to Inverness, go do that. It's free for everyone. It's very easy, quick, painless, and that'll give you a bunch of really cool new features, such as custom anchors, which we use to help you mirror your book-matched parts, align other parts that require custom location on this project. And then we've got some other cool things like pinching on the screen to zoom in and out, adding position so you can really reliably position things without having to snap to a tiny grid feature. A lot of really cool improvements on there. So make sure you upgrade. There's only good reasons to do it. So Jake's cutting this outside profile now, and he is starting with an offset. And that's because this is what we would call a roughing cut. This is mostly to remove material around the outside of the profile and not necessarily to give the profile a perfect, clean, smooth finish. The more material you remove, the more the router, like any other router, will fight back a little bit. And so yeah, we recommend roughing passes and then taking that with an offset and then removing that offset, which Jake will do in a minute, to do a finishing pass. And this is the same thing that you do with any CNC machine, wood or metal or plastic. Do a roughing pass with an offset and then come back in for a finishing pass with no offset. Or even in the case of the dowels, if you need to tweak the size of something, maybe enlarge that dowel hole, then you could go past a 0 offset to a negative offset. That's kind of advanced mode. For this outside cut, we're just going to do an offset to start, and then remove that offset for the finishing cut. And we've got some kind of recommended offsets preloaded into Origin as well. So Jake's just programming his new depth, I assume, here. Yep. And going again around at that same offset. Yeah, and that's probably a 1/4 inch per pass on the depth because we're using a 1/4 inch cutter. good rule of thumb for most woods, at least, is to take a depth of cut, which is your cut depth, equal to the cutter diameter. So we're using a 1/4 inch cutter diameter on this. Jake's taking 1/4 inch depth cuts for the roughing cut especially. If Jake was using an 1/8 inch cutter, he would take an 1/8 inch depth of cut per pass, because your depth of cut, your depth per pass, should equal most of the time your cutter diameter. For a finishing pass, it's nice to be able to do the entire depth at one time, but that's because you're only removing at that point something like 0.05 or 0.02 inches of material on the diameter of the cutter. So even though you're taking the full depth of cut, it's a much lighter load on the cutter and on the router itself. It won't push you around quite so much, and you'll get a really good, smooth finish quality on that. And yeah, looks like just went around a corner there. Jake is using auto around the corners, auto feed, which you can activate at any time while you're cutting by pressing the green button on the right handle of Origin. And what that does is that's kind of like Helix for corners. In a way, you hold Origin still, and the spindle will move itself around those corners to make sure that everything stays crisp, clean, and smooth. Corners can be tricky sometimes, but auto makes that really easy.
All right, sorry that may have taken a little longer. I just wanted to be extra cautious. Make sure I nail this the first time.
Yeah, looks good to me.
Bloop. I had to move that out of my way. So we have our core channel cut, and you can see it starts to poke out there. Now, when you're cutting this, be really cautious, especially on that first roughing pass, because as you get into areas that you've already cut, you'll go from the tool being fully loaded up to all of a sudden empty space, and at that point, that's where you can go jerk into, into a piece that you don't want to cut. So something to be mindful of as you're going through and cutting this. Gosh, that is cool. All right,
Yeah,
let's take
pretty
this.
crisp though.
Yeah, let me take this off and I'll hand it off to Russ.
Yeah, so show this on the bench cam here. So we've got, again, that chord channel, which this is the bottom with the base joint. Bottom entering in, and then this is your reveal at the front of the lamp, and then the exit out the back, along with those locating features. We've got some dowels here, here, down here, over here, and this base joint, which we're going to do another cut with the base in a moment. This is one of the trickier setups with the lamp. Really clever, actually. So this base needs to be joined to the neck here, but we don't want to see any gaps. We don't want any of the typical CNC woodworking dog bone features that you would have to use if you cut 100% of the base from the top down, like you do the profile. So what Leia came up with, and it still blows my mind, I'm going to call this genius, is this locating feature, which allows you to take this flat part, locate it flat up this way against workstation, and then use both the surface of the base or of workstation to grid an x-axis, and then use this notch that you cut in the top-down view to grid your y-axis, so that this base joint can use the square end of your router bit, your 1/4 inch router bit, and you get a really cool square joint that is aligned to a circle, which is really difficult to do. You can't. You don't align things to a circle. So she left this square feature here. And Jake's gonna set that up. We'll show you how it works.
Will you do me a favor, Russ? Will you sign into your account? I think
Yeah.
You have
Oh yeah.
You have the
I've
files.
got the latest file.
One thing, I'll get the workstation set up. I'm using the back of the engraving bit to make this a really accurate grid. One, because it's if you can take the extra moment to put the engraving in backwards, it's absolutely the way to create a grid. It's a nice solid probing point. But for this application too, since we're going in that middle of the notch, it's built for a 1/4-inch cutter, but it fits that that little piece perfectly, or that fits the 1/4-inch probe perfectly. All right.
Okay, you're all set. It's the very first folder in there.
Thank you, sir.
Always organize your files. Folders make things really nice, and we've got folders on Origin. You can name them. You can rearrange them on ShaperHub on the web. It's pretty easy. We've got drag and drop now, which is super cool. It helps keep you organized. You don't want to be. I've got hundreds of files on my account, and I don't want to be scrolling through them all the time. Use folders, or don't. You know, it's your life, but I like them.
All right, if you want to join me down here. So what I am doing is I am using this little bit of a flat section to reference off of my support bar, pressing firmly up, using the larger spoil board on my workstation, and clamping that into place. It's a small reference face, but it's enough for you to be able to reference and get that so that it's nice and straight. You can feel it. Crank that down.
Yeah, you do want to make sure that this is nice and secure, because once you cut this reference feature away, it will not be really possible to align it again. So you've got one shot, not at cutting this strictly, because once you have it set up, you can leave it and come back to it. But you do really only get one chance at fixturing it.
Yes.
Once you start cutting that away.
All right, one more scan and a grid. Bingo. One thing I want to note too on your workstation spoil board, you want to make sure that you have just a little bit of pressure applied. Not enough pressure so that it's pushing your piece away, but a little bit of pressure just to make sure that it's supported and that you don't want this to actually bounce around on you while you're cutting. All right. Okay, so now we're going to be doing our probing off of the clamping face, or the spoil board itself, and then right there in the middle. A 1, dragging over to the other side. 2, that's my x-axis. I'm coming back in to set my y. There's that gap that we were talking about, and I'm going to just nestle in there and mark 3.
Beautiful.
Now I have it centered, and my file is going to have that custom anchor point so that I just use, I don't have to figure out what anchor point I'm grabbing or where I'm placing it. I just use that custom anchor point, drop it right where I need it. There it is. Place it at 0, 0. Voila. So we're doing this all with an 1/8 inch bit. And again, it's nice to have the depths written out there right for you in the file. So you can actually do that for yourself too when you're making your own files. You just you'll bring in text and make sure that you create an outline out of that text and turn it blue, which turns it to a guide.
And we have our Illustrator template available on shapertools.com. In the support section, we've got all kinds of help articles on if you are new to digital design. We can get you started that way through our articles and through sessions. We've done some sessions on the topic. Or if you are new to digital design and aren't really interested in it either, if you don't want to learn digital design, we can help you with that. We have Shaper Assist, which will take files or sketches or any kind of input that you give us, and will help you make those files that you can upload to Origin. Or if you're moderately comfortable with digital design and just have a really complex project, we're here to help out with that.
All right, so I have my depth callouts here. I'm just going to go ahead and put that actual final depth in there, which is 0.441. I touched off directly on top of my piece too, because I want to make sure these depths are really accurate. And I use that onboard calculator to just divide that by 2. So I'll do that in 2 depth passes, clear that out that material, and then I will move on to these, which I'm working down to 0.691. From there, I'm going to start with an offset, like a 0.01 offset positive, test fit, take a little bit away, test fit, and just kind of squeak up on it until we get that fit that we're looking for.
All right, so right now Jake is pocketing, which is an operation that he did also on the base of the neck part, just clearing material. And what pocketing does is it allows you to move Origin basically anywhere within that hatched pocketing area, and Origin automatically senses the boundaries of that. So when you run up against a boundary which has a baked-in offset, like we were talking about before, it will prevent you from overshooting that boundary. And if you push it too far, it'll automatically retract to save your work from yourself. Save my work from myself all the time. And then once that pocket is done, we can go back and take an inside cut. And that inside cut will have that nice built-in offset already from the pocket. A lot of the time, you can go in and go straight to a 0 offset finishing inside cut after you've pocketed. Especially with bigger tools, I find. With the 1/8 inch, sometimes I like leaving a little offset. It depends on the work. So, looks like the pocket is done now, and we're going into those 2 rectangles on the sides. And what those are doing is making basically that H joint. So the pocket originally does the top of the H, and the 2 rectangles on the sides do what we're calling now the sides of the H, of that H joint. Let's see. Saw Jake taking a look there, just changing his depths or his offsets a little bit. Yeah. Okay, getting all the way down to the depth on the H now. And Leia, we went through a few revisions on these cut profiles. There were some interesting things that we changed. Number 1 being the annotation style, but well, we'll come back to this. It looks like we're about to do a test fit.
Yeah, so I got a 0.01. I got a 0.01 offset on there right now. Let's get this dust out of there. Which I'm pretty confident it's going to be too tight or not fit at all. But I would rather sneak up on that. Yeah, I can feel that center part is a little too tight. So when I'm talking about the different parts of the joint, you have these outside walls here, and then you have these inside walls as well. All points of contacts, all glue surfaces, which makes an incredibly strong joint. So my outside feels really good, but that inside could use maybe, actually, I'm talking a couple thou off just the inside. So I'll go ahead and do that.
So one of my favorite things about digital design and Origin is the ability to tweak on the go. Jake's just tweaking the offset for that inside cut, but we also tweaked the cut files as we went, the templates for this project. One example I remember is the cap we iterated on a few times to make the tabs fit most easily and be more sandable inside the cap. And it's really easy to do those kinds of revisions both on tool and with digital design software like Illustrator, for example.
That is the kind of fit I'm looking for. You can go ahead and pull it out.
Perfect, dude. Yeah, I love it when it just stays in place after you let go.
All right, show off what that looks like down here. There's the H joint. And that fits. Where's the best place to do it?
Yeah, there you go.
I'll bring it down here.
It's nice and snug, but you know what we could use to tighten that up?
Yeah.
Are these glue-up jigs. So,
Yes.
one of the things that I use Origin very often for, even in the context of more traditional jointer, planer, table saw woodworking, is the ability to use it to make quick one-off templates or jigs or anything that you need just a couple of, or that might be in an organic shape that are more difficult to make with traditional woodworking tools. And so what we've got right here are some glue up jigs, just quick out of MDF, that Leia again designed and included in this project. And yeah, let's hold these up to the bench cam. So you can see here that these have this 80-degree angle. It's not a 90-degree angle, it's an 80-degree angle. And that's because what we've done with this base and the neck, what she's done, is give it this really nice tilt, which is a beautiful design detail, but it does make assembling and clamping and gluing just that bit more difficult because you no longer have parallel surfaces to clamp against. So what this does is you add that right there. You've got a nice little relief for your 90-degree corner, and we're going to add one of these on each side and clamp it the rest of the way together. If you were doing this at home, you would probably be gluing this and assembling this at this point. But yeah, you want to clamp it up?
Yeah. One thing to note when you are gluing this up, put a little packing tape right there on that surface, because especially on this one that comes right here, because glue doesn't like to stick to packing tape very well, and you'll get a little bit of squeeze out when you're gluing this up. So,
speaking of glue not sticking, another tip, since this is a pretty complex project with a lot of parts. Here, I got this. Teamwork makes the dream work. Since this is a pretty complex project with a lot of parts, certain portions of the project, and think about this for yourself when you do it, you may want to pre-finish portions of it. These two parts, for example, it could be kind of difficult to get any sandpaper, for example, into the tight corner of this joint and clean out any squeeze out that you get. But pre-finishing these two parts prevents the glue from sticking as badly or at all, so it makes it really easy to clean up. The flip side to that is that you do have to make sure to keep finish off of all of your glue surfaces, because glue doesn't stick to finish. So if you get finish all up in this joint, then it's going to fall apart as soon as you unclamp it, which would be a disaster. But for example, I'm working on a large cabinet right now, and I taped off all of my glue surfaces and pre-finished that cabinet so that I don't have to reach way deep inside there and get finish all the way back after it's glued up. So, tip.
everyone's got their own way of dealing with glue squeeze out. This is a really nice one. You know, with most finishes, oil finish specifically, glue just doesn't like to stick to it. So That's great. And there's a lot of little crevices and little
Yeah,
nooks
a
and
lot.
crannies to get in there if you want to try to chisel out glue.
We go back to the bench cam. Imagine trying to get any glue squeeze out of all of those little nooks and crannies. So yeah, just think ahead on this one.
Speaking of glue squeeze out and that neck, you want to be really cautious of where you're putting glue when you're assembling those two halves of the neck, because you don't want squeeze out to happen inside that cord channel. And it's hard to tell, especially in these areas where it crosses over. So just be mindful of that, as well as the joint down here. Doesn't mean don't use any glue, but more of a dot, not a lot.
There's a
situation.
fine line. Yeah, there's a fine line. Cool. Well, I mean, that's the demo. We've got a lot more that we can show off.
Yeah.
There are some new things that we learned working on this project. Some big obvious ones are the electrical work. I had never made a lampshade before. We've got a lot of unique hardware. Yeah, so let's start with the lampshade.
Yeah.
We've got, you can see it here, but this doesn't really do justice to how complex a lampshade really is to put together. All you see is this nearly cylindrical, perfect white cotton shade. But there are a few parts to it, surprisingly maybe. The outside of it is, I'll show you, we've got this white cotton woven cloth, but that's actually backed by this adhesive backed plastic material. And correct me if I'm wrong, Leia, I think this is styrene, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yep,
okay, so adhesive backed styrene. We got both of these products off of Amazon, and there are links to what we used in the project PDF. Not only that, though, also we hemmed the top and bottom of the lampshade so you don't get a rough edge around the top or bottom. That's all folded over. And so since the styrene is only adhesive backed on one side, you then need a tape to apply to the cotton and then also fold that over onto the styrene. So that tape is listed in the PDF of the project on ShaperHub. And then to get it all cut to the right size, how do you do that? So going back to the idea of using Origin to make quick templates, kind of like our glue up jig, Leia designed this 2D template, which is the shade profile stencil. And when I was validating this project at the shop here, this is what I used to basically trace on the styrene. I used some double stick tape to plop this down on the styrene, traced it with a pen, and then that gave me also kind of a nice edge to run a knife against to trim out that styrene. Once that was done, then I could apply the cotton to the styrene, trim the cotton, apply the tape to the cotton, make all the hems. But making templates with Origin, yeah, there are a lot of different ways to do this. I think originally, Leia, you used a large, like Kinko's sized plotter to do this,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And that was a great way to do it. Also, when you weren't sure exactly what of the several 2D profiles we started out with you wanted to use, because that's obviously quicker than cutting a template. But once you've arrived at a conclusion, especially, really nice to just zip something out of hardboard like this.
Yeah. Great template material. It's also what I really love about this project is it kind of gives you the bones of how to create this shade, but in reality, you can make the shade out of whatever material that you want,
That's
as long
true.
as it has some rigidity and it's going to hold that form, and you can cut it. And it's just a totally customizable lamp, from the species of wood that you're going to use for the whole thing, the finish, the shade, the hardware, the color of the hardware, the color of the
Yeah.
cord. Like, everything is just completely up to you. So you can take this design and run with it and fit it into any
Yeah.
environment.
What was that lampshade material that you were telling me about the other day, Jake?
It was called Sinskin.
Okay.
And I haven't found it again yet, but it was so cool. It was a synthetic rice paper, and it was definitely fiberglassy. Like kind of left you a little itchy. But it diffused light so beautifully, and it held its shape much like styrene, but it had that rice paper texture.
Yeah. So if you wanted to make Japanese-inspired screens or lamps.
Yeah, that had a little bit more heft to it than actual rice paper.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool thought. Yeah. So we've got the lampshade. We've got a lot of unique hardware on here.
Yeah.
Let's see. We've got none of it that you can really see right now, unfortunately.
That's
but
the point, though.
That's the point. Yeah. It's so cool, though. I love these threaded inserts. Brass threaded inserts from McMaster Carr. Great for any kind of wood, hardwood, softwood. I think they're advertised as being for hardwood, but you can use them for anything. And they sell these threaded inserts with a specialty driver that you just chuck up in your hand drill or in a drill press, and you drive these threaded inserts right in. Those are really handy. So the holes on this neck, which you can see right here at the top and the bottom, those are designed to take those threaded inserts, 1024 threading to be specific. Those are really handy. I've used those on tabletops. We have a whole drawer full of them here at HQ. We love those. And then electrical hardware. So the electrical hardware is a great opportunity for you to personalize your lamp. For this piece, which we put together here before the show, I used mustard, I guess I would call colored cord. I've been really loving this color lately. Brass accents, and you can't see now because it's behind the lampshade, but like white electrical plastic parts, like a white light bulb socket. But we also have over here, we've got some gray cord, and this is what the cord looked like when I bought it. Nothing on either of the ends, and I wired everything up myself. We're not going to dig into that on this session because Color Cord Company, which is who we bought all of these parts from, have a really great series of online tutorials on how to wire all of their components. But then also, if you want to save some time, they have these which they sell. And these are really handy. Put this on the bench cam. As you can see, it's basically just the cord, but pre-wired with a 3-prong plug end and a inline switch. So that's really nice. And it's only a couple dollars more. So I think it was a really good educational experience to wire this all up from scratch. But I think if I were doing it again, I would probably buy the pre-made cord.
Yeah.
And Leia, hopefully you sell these to people who don't want to spend the amount of time that it takes to build one for their own. I think if I were selling these, I would probably go with the pre-made cord as well.
Yeah, I actually am very picky about the color and the pre-made cords. It's a limited palette, so I wire everything myself.
Okay. So you must be pretty quick at it then. Yeah. The colors that they sell are really nice. I guess, yeah, I don't know if I would have gone with the pre-made cord if I couldn't get it in this mustard. I really love the mustard and walnut.
Yeah, that's a good combination, especially with the sapwood or the walnut. It kind of has that golden hue.
Yeah, feels very like mid-century to me, mustard for some reason, and walnut. Yeah, so let's show off the Shaper Hub project.
Yes.
Just because it's so awesome. I mean, we've been talking about it. Let's show off the real deal. So not only do we have pictures and instructions and everything, but Sam and Tanya from HQ also drove up to Portland to shoot this incredible video of Leia at her studio making a lamp from start to finish, and you'll find that on the Hub project as well.
Yeah. Bit of a masterclass there. You don't need me to try to explain how to cut this thing. You can listen to Leia tell you exactly how to cut it and do this project properly. And it's a really, really good video. Really cool process to watch come together.
Mm-hmm. Part of the reason we only did a couple of cuts today. We showed you some of the trickier things, but really everything that you need to know is in that video. It's 15 or 16 minutes long. Watch it even if you don't plan on making this lamp because it's really incredible, beautifully shot, and inspirational woodworking. It'll make you want to go to the shop just to make something, anything.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right.
I mean, I think that about covers it. Leia, anything you want to add?
I don't think so. Thanks for having me. This was really fun. It was fun to watch somebody else make one of my pieces. So
Yeah.
I hope to see more of that.
Yeah. Thank you again for sharing it with us and with the world, or with the Shaper world.
Yeah, it was our pleasure.
Thank you everyone for joining. We will see you again in 2 weeks.